How you doing, everybody, and welcome back to Wilde's Mailbox here at ESPNMilwaukee.com and ESPNMadison.com. Been away for a while since the NFL meetings, but we're back answering your questions here via email or via Twitter. Today's question comes from Kevin via email, and his question is, it's very timely. Jason, what do you make of the Donovan McNabb trade, and are there any similarities to the Brett Favre trade that the Packers made in 2008? Well, I think it's incredibly interesting to juxtapose the two trades. Obviously, the Packers choosing to avoid at all costs the idea of trading Brett Favre to the Minnesota Vikings in August of 2008. In fact, they didn't even want to have him on their schedule once, much less twice. So while they had a proposed deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they chose instead to send him to the New York Jets. Whereas Andy Reid and the Philadelphia Eagles had various offers for Donovan McNabb, end up trading him to the Washington Redskins for the 37th overall pick in this month's NFL draft, plus either a third or fourth rounder next year in the 2011 draft, not caring that the Redskins are obviously in their division and they'll be seeing them twice a year. Now, obviously the Packers still see Brett Favre twice a year anyway. It was just postponed by 1 year because he went to the Jets and then retired again and ended up with the Vikings. Now, there are some differences here. First of all, obviously, Brett Favre had retired, whereas Donovan McNabb is 33 years old and still has 4 years where he's still in kind of the potential prime to late prime of his career, whereas it was unclear how much Favre had left in the tank. As it turned out, he's had quite a bit and got the Vikings to the NFC Championship game and within a late interception of the Super Bowl. So there are some similarities. I do think it's interesting, though, and I think people who are passionate about Brett Favre and are anti-Ted Thompson or anti-Packers will point to this, and they'll have a good argument, is that, you know, the Vikings were the team Favre wanted to go to. He certainly didn't want to go to the Jets when you think about it, whereas Donovan McNabb didn't want to go to the Raiders, and yet they might have gotten a better deal sending him to the Raiders, but instead Andy Reid felt it was important to do right by Donovan McNabb, and Brett Favre fans would argue that the Packers didn't do right by him by trading him to the Jets, and then him obviously having to retire a second time to get to the Vikings. But I'll tell you this, the one interesting thing that I think is different about those two scenarios is that, you know, as you look at what Brett Favre has done for the Vikings, and you look at what Donovan McNabb could do for the Redskins, it's a pretty risky play, but I think if the Packers would have gotten the best offer from the Vikings, and I've said this for a long time, they may have been better off just sending him to the Vikings, because I think the Vikings were desperate enough that they would have been willing to trade a lot more than just the third-round pick that the Packers ended up with from the Jets. But no matter how you look at it, you could either say that it was really nice that Andy Reid was nice enough to trade Donovan McNabb to a team that he feels is a contender and that he'll get to play the Eagles twice a year, and it was, you know, evil for the Packers not to do the same for Brett Favre, or you can look at it from the other perspective and say it was really smart for the Packers to not trade Brett Favre within the division where they'd see him twice a year and he'd have the opportunity to stick it to him, and it was really stupid for Andy Reid to trade Donovan McNabb to a division rival in the Redskins, where the Redskins can beat the Eagles a couple times next year and maybe even keep them out of the playoffs as they go through what they claim isn't a rebuilding year but appears to be one. So either way you look at it, I think it's just an interesting juxtaposition of these two deals. So that's it for today. We'll do as many videos as we get questions for. Certainly the draft is upcoming, so if you have a question that you'd like to have answered on Wilde's Mailbox, you can email it to me at jwilde@espnmilwaukee.com or at espnmadison.com. Either one works. And you can always use the Twitter if you can get your question in 140 characters or less. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.